I don't know if you've noticed, but the world isn't doing too good right now. And in this video, we're going to discuss what we consider to be the three biggest issues facing the world today, although with a particular focus on Britain, because that is where we're from after all. So it seems like amid the cacophony of voices screaming out the various reasons they think everything's wrong, it's becoming increasingly difficult to pick out any one argument or to discern which voices are genuinely trying to inform and which voices are just trying to shout the loudest. So before we start, and importantly, why should you trust us? Well, honestly, you shouldn't. Not blindly, anyway. Linked in the description below will be a sources document you can use to verify what we say, but I'd recommend you even go beyond that if you have the time and mental energy. We've tried our best to get the facts right, but we're not experts. We're trying to become better informed and more able to critically analyse what's going on in politics and the media, but these videos are going to be as much about trying to get some clear information out to the world as they are about documenting our learning process. We're not going to get everything right, and we'll do our best to make corrections where needed. So with that said, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about today is the massive rise in misinformation and disinformation that we've seen in the last 5 years. Now, misinformation's always been a problem, especially since the beginning of the internet era, as it's just become so easy for anyone and everyone to amplify their voice. But it feels like we've reached an all-time high in recent years, and it's only going to get worse. As AI generation tools get better and better, muddying the waters of truth even further, this is just going to serve to push people further and further to the fringes of their political beliefs and achieves nothing but driving division. If you spend any time in online comment sections, it seems like a lot of people who've been politically radicalised all share this same point of view, that anyone who doesn't share their worldview or who isn't really interested in politics must just be somehow less intelligent. Oh, I've done my research and I've fact-checked things as best I can, but they still don't agree with me. They must just be stupid. Ironically, I think this is probably the dumbest stance a person can take. It's very rare I meet someone who genuinely seems completely devoid of intellect, but comment sections of the internet are full of them. It doesn't seem to add up. Something more likely to me is that people just don't have the time or the energy to come home from a hard day or night, or some ungodly combination of the two, I'm looking at you shift workers, and spend their downtime researching and checking every tweet, TikTok, boomer meme that they see on their feeds. That's where misinformation and disinformation take hold. So let's take a second to break down what we actually mean when we use those terms. Now, while both might amount to the same thing, the spread of inaccurate or downright untrue information, the difference really comes down to intent. Think of it this way. Misinformation is your aunt sharing some meme saying, insert politician you hate here, said some objectively horrible thing that they probably didn't actually say, but sort of sounds vaguely like they could have. While disinformation is the Russian bot farm specifically created to pump out those memes ready to be shared. Your aunt doesn't actually want to be spreading lies. I mean, I assume you might have a really horrible aunt. She's just spreading the word of a thing she thinks is important. It might be factually incorrect, but she believes it, and she wants to get it out there. Now, there's a very obvious moral difference between that and deliberately spreading lies, but the outcome's the same. More and more people see the meme, more and more people talk about it, more and more variations of the meme pop up. Eventually, people start to believe the quote was true, and suddenly the truth has a little less meaning. So what do we do about it? Well, that's where it gets tricky. The reason it's so hard to know what sources of information to trust is that even taking the bot farms and trolls out of the equation, the vast majority of media in this country is owned by a small handful of just insanely rich people. Meaning before the facts and figures make it to the public, they're packaged up in whatever way suits the media mogul owner of that particular media outlet. This is a really important fact to consider. A newspaper or a media company always seems like this entity, but in reality it can often be just a megaphone amplifying the voice of one person. And more often than not, that one person is a billionaire trying to push an agenda that convinces the world to look elsewhere for the problems. And that leads us nicely onto problem number 2 facing Britain and the world today. And that's the massive rise we've seen in wealth inequality. Now again, this isn't a new problem. There have always been rich people, there have always been poor people, but the gap between them is insanely high, and it's only going to get bigger. And it's funny to me, because when you look into it, the vast majority of problems in the world today boil down eventually to people don't have enough money to get by. But we're constantly fed these disinformation campaigns and scapegoats to blame when really it's as simple as wages being kept low to maximise profits for those at the top. Okay, maybe it's not exactly that simple, but really that's a huge part of it. The top 20% of households in the UK earn more than 12 times the amount of the bottom 20%, and that's not even looking at the real wealthiest among us. The top 1% of the country hold as much wealth as the lowest 50% combined. That's just a staggering amount, and it's kind of hard to wrap your brain around it. That just makes it easier for the ultra-rich owners of the media to push stories that push our emotional buttons and distract us from the ever-growing gap in our finances. Whenever you hear about these culture war topics meant to divide us, migration, rising crime, the latest round of political gaffes, these are just meant to make us look the other way, while some finance dude in London with a spreadsheet moves some numbers around and adds another £100 to your rent. Coincidentally, that's our third topic for the day, housing. Now, according to the Office for National Statistics, the average home in England cost £290,000 in 2024, which is 7.7 times the average wage at £37,600. Now, in 1997, it was 3.6 times, with the average house costing just under 60 grand in England and the average wage at £16,958. 1977 wasn't even that long ago. We're not talking about the post-war boom of the 50s and 60s. This is just the 90s. I was alive, and the average house has risen by over £200,000. So cool, buying a house is out of the question for a lot of people, so we'll have to rent. Oh wait, it looks like since at least 1989, rent prices have consistently gone up at a higher rate than general inflation. So renting privately is going to take up more of your pay every year. Awesome. Social housing it is. Actually, in the 1950s, we were building somewhere in the region of 200,000 social houses a year. Over the last 15 years, that number has been closer to the 10,000 mark, with existing houses being either sold or knocked down at a rate of about 20,000 a year. So actually, we're losing 10,000 homes from the social housing system every year. So if we can't afford to buy without significant savings, renting privately will deplete those savings, and there are no council houses available, what are we really supposed to do? Unfortunately, this is the part of the video where I tell you there's no easy fix. It's going to take work, and I know that puts a lot of people off. Like I said earlier, we're all exhausted when we get home at the end of the day, and the last thing we want to do is spend our time fact-checking everything we see on social media. But honestly, the answer to the problems I addressed briefly today is just education at all levels, formal and informal. We need to be teaching kids better critical thinking skills at school, but we also need to be practicing those skills in our adult lives, and learning to look past the biases of the news stories we encounter. It's a hard, boring and thankless task, but it's also so important. The consequences of decisions made now are going to be felt for decades to come. We've suffered as a society because we react and vote based around these disinformation campaigns, without knowing the truth of what we're voting for. Just look at the fiasco that was Brexit. Remember the bus? 350 million to the NHS could have helped avoid the budget cuts we've seen in the last 6 years, or even spent more on an institution that we as Britons quite rightly cherish. In the face of these obvious lies, we have to hold ourselves to account and support others to maintain that standard for themselves. Now obviously you shouldn't believe everything you see on the internet, but it's also obvious that there are a lot of good resources online, and there are tools that can help you to verify what you're reading. In the description, we'll link a document with some of the sources we used for this video, as well as some fact-checking resources you can use, just to see how accurate those memes that you're seeing are, or aren't, as the case may be. It doesn't have to be much. Even 10 minutes a day, 1 minute a day. Anything and everything you can do to be better informed and more able to see through misinformation will help push us one step closer to a slightly better political landscape. If you can, try and read from as many sources as possible on both sides of the political spectrum. It's too easy to just read things that we agree with, but it's equally important that we regularly challenge our beliefs. If what you believe can't stand up to a little scrutiny, maybe it's time you consider why that is and how much you actually believe it. In any case, we desperately need to do something to improve the level of political discourse in Britain at the moment. It's rough out there now. Best to arm yourself with the tools you need to make it through unscathed. Ish. If you liked this video or thought we made any good points, then drop a sub, hit the like button, maybe share it with your friends. It really helped the channel as we're obviously in the very early stages of this thing, so anything to get the word out would be amazing. We haven't really figured out all the formats and stuff, so the next video won't necessarily look exactly like this one. It might, Honestly, I have no idea at this point. We're also not sure about what our upload schedule is going to look like. There are two of us working on this, and we both have full-time jobs, so our time is quite limited. But we do have a few ideas in the pipeline. Watch this space for updates, I guess. The one good thing about the state of the world at the moment is at least we won't run out of video ideas anytime soon. Stay tuned.